It is March 31st, 2023, 11:11 a.m. Make a wish. My name is Kessie Ian Anderson, and here's another edition of Heresiarch. I want to make an announcement I'm pretty happy about. I have my first audiobook. I've got all the files recorded, all the effects added, everything done. I released the book in 2017. It's called the Pure Saga, the Pure Volume 1. And I'm pretty happy with it. Now, the book, I may have rushed, or it was just amateur hour. It's all self-published. Everything was done was mine. So you will find some grammatical mistakes. But that's what I like about the audiobook is you can't tell so much because I narrated it. So in the book I wrote it, illustrated it, all the writing. But my editor did amazing and helped out. And now it's an audiobook. So 2017, I put it out. I started it in 2006. And that's actually, this book is kind of what pushed me down the rabbit holes. Because after I kind of said, no, this Mormon LDS theology doesn't quite work for me, I took everything off the table when it came to metaphysics. Because that was the whole point of my book series, and it still is. So when I started writing it, I wrote it from I was 100% true blue believer. I'm going to use this as my theological studies. I was going to take their narratives, use them as vehicles to take me through Holy Writ and figure out as much as possible as I could about what the doctrine was it true, etc. So in my other videos, I talk about I was born into Mormonism. I followed and went through all of the levels you can go through in their priesthood. Did the Mormon mission, did the temple marriage, all that stuff. Then 2006 started writing the book. By about 2008 or 9, after all the information I uncovered, and I just wanted to be objective. That's all it was. I just wanted to be objective and search out information from everywhere because the people at the top that run the show of Mormonism, they're very good at passing the buck and pushing it back down onto the lay membership. And then when they do give answers, they're not concrete. So that's what I was trying to do, is say, okay, this is the doctrine. And in Mormonism, they have a belief in continual and continuing revelation via the prophets and apostles. So the Mormon argument is after the apostles and prophets in the New Testament, after Jesus' crucifixion and they were all killed, his apostles, later on, all the persecution was such that those who were given the priesthood authority, the authorization to act in God's name, that was removed from the earth because for whatever reason, and I don't understand all of the logistics behind it, but to transfer priesthood power has to go in an unbroken chain from father to son or man to man. And that has to be done by the laying on of hands. You can't just study and get a warm feeling and then claim you have the power. It has to be an actual transference from somebody who has the power. And then when I was on my mission, the excuse I would use is, okay, let's say you want to go to Japan and drive a car. Okay, well, great. I will give you a license to do that. So I will just take your photo, look up some Japanese words, create a license, and there you go. And there you go, you can drive. But everybody pushes back and says, well, I can't do that because you are not authorized to give me a driver's license to drive in Japan. The same principle applies in theory with the Mormon argument. So it goes like this. Joseph Smith, he read in Hebrews, if any of you, I'm almost thinking in Bulgarian, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and to him it shall be given. So the idea was Joseph Smith said, hey, I'm going to go to, the Mormons call it the sacred grove. So basically he went behind his house and he prayed. And that first prayer, what they call it, or the sacred prayer, or in the sacred grove, he was then visited by two beings that held aloft in the air. He says it was Jesus and God. That right there set the tone for what was to come with Joseph Smith and his Mormon doctrine. Now, there are controversies as to the questions that he asked these entities, or what he did not ask, or what he changed, or so technically there's 11 accounts given on record about what happened, and some of them overlap. However, he claims that those two entities he saw proves that oneness of God, like Noahide laws that I go into, is not real because God has a body, physical body, as in when a being is resurrected, when a human is resurrected, that is your perfect vehicle and you will never be ununited from it. And that's the point of resurrection. So Jesus, when he was crucified and he came back, he had a body. For a spirit hath not flesh and bones as ye see me have. So when you get your resurrected body back, that's the Mormon argument. And then it goes on, Joseph Smith in his King Follett discourse says, if you do not comprehend the character of God, you do not comprehend yourselves. And he says that the God of the universe holding everything in its power is a man, as in he is our father. We can return to be like him. Now, that to me, as Luciferian, Masonic, occult as that doctrine is, Arianism, if you go back to the Nicene Creed and those that push back against the St. Augustine and the Holy Trinity idea, that to me is the one doctrine I will always take from Mormonism. Not necessarily that once you have your resurrected body, you're stuck with it all the time. But I mean, if it's perfect and it's our perfect output device, then I don't know. Why not? I guess. I don't know. I do like the idea of the human body. I do like the idea of having it perfect and functioning correctly. I don't think any of us understand what it would be like, because I don't think any of ours actually do, because of whether it's genetics or DNA. However, so Joseph Smith, he then goes on to teach an even bigger controversial doctrine that not only are we children of God, but we can grow up and be like God. Live the life that he lives. Do what he does, i.e., become godlike. Because we are children of God, we will grow up to be a God. I look at it different. Some people will look at that concept and say, so you can lord over others. I'm not looking at Old Testament Yahweh stuff. If that concept were true, if it were to be true, I look at it as the Michael Jordan teaching somebody everything they can to be successful at basketball, hiding nothing. And my sign of a great man, giving away everything you have to help somebody else without feeling slighted, without feeling scarcity. So that's the way I look at the idea of a God, like a father figure, teaching me everything I need to know in order to succeed and ascend to the levels of this person. And perhaps, and then the Mormon argument is that if that's the case, and this is where Christianity attacks Mormonism for diminishing God. Because if that is the case, if we are men and can grow up to become like God, and it is an eternal cycle, an eternal round, then that means at some previous point in the millennials past, centuries, whatever, multiverses, who knows, God at some point was a man like us going through a quasi-similar experience on his planet that he was born to. And then Mormonism has the belief as well that matter, kind of like Einstein, matter cannot be created nor destroyed, but they believe that spirit has always existed. So our spirit, our matter, our entity, we've always been. It's just a being, always existed. So God and us, for whatever reason, we've all existed. And for whatever reason, God, the Mormon view of God, figured out a method and a system in which he was able to take upon himself this body, or set the path, show the way, blaze the trail, be the pioneer for others to follow in the godlike footsteps. And then that is where Christianity, mainstream Christianity, will attack Mormonism for not being Christian. Is because not only is Jesus the Son of God, every one of us spiritually are also the Son of God. But then you get into the war in heaven concept where pre-existence is before the earth was formed, They basically coded it out, created everything digitally or created it spiritually, if you want to call it that, had the blueprints, had the everything, and then God basically presented to the children, said, okay, we have two choices. One, you want to choose on your own whether or not you want to come back and live with me. If you do that, here are the steps you'll have to follow, and they lays out the plan of salvation. Then another gentleman shows up named Lucifer, and Lucifer goes, I will make sure everybody is saved, and the glory be mine. Everybody being saved means you have no choice. You are forced into it. So in theory, according to Mormonism, there are those given the choice, they do not want to hang out with mom and dad all the time. And that introduces another thing. How do you have a child? A husband has to have a wife in order for procreation to take place. So Mormonism teaches that God has a wife. And then it gets even more controversial. There's the potential of wives. So God, in theory, might be a polygamist, according to Mormon doctrine. King Solomon had many wives. And what they do as well, Joseph Smith taught that Adam had two wives. One was Lilith and one was Eve. And what's crazy is I didn't even know that until I had actually finished writing my first book. Because Lilith is one of my main characters that I introduce. So the idea of the pre-existence, there was a war in heaven, and the spirit family, one wanted to be able to choose for themselves, the other one did not. And that was Lucifer and his fallen angels that chose their path, and there was a war rebellion. Well, that implies or means that Jesus, Lucifer, me, you, everybody spiritually are related. We are brothers and sisters. And that concept is terrifying to a lot of Christians. It's blasphemy, etc. I don't really have a dog in the fight anymore. My whole thing is I just know that I really enjoy freedom. I really enjoy freedom and liberty. So that's my underlying principle. That's my egregore, is to be free. And in theory, if I had to pretend that the world of Mormonism was true, then I would have fought on the side of the Jesus narrative so that the glory goes to the Father for whatever reason. Fine, cool. But I have choice. I am free to choose. So there's a lot of interesting dogma brought out on that narrative. The term heresiarch, an originator or chief advocate of a heresy. Heresy is Greek from heretikos, and it means able to choose. Then look up the term religion. At its root is slave. So I don't want to be bound by any covenant. I don't want to be bound by any rules and regulations in a relative world. Something at one point that works at one era might not necessarily work in another, unless it's such a basic fundamental principle. And that's why I think, going back to Mormons and the idea of continual revelation, it has bit them in the butt, because the old school prophets really were confident in their doctrine, and they said a lot of things that are now have not happened. So in my book, I basically say, fine, you taught all of this. I'm holding your feet to the fire. Here you go. You claim you are a restoration of the same very priesthood that Jesus had. Well, one area I look into was Samson. Samson was a Nazirite. He had to follow a code. Do not cut your hair, do not drink alcohol, and do not touch the dead. And then that goes into the New Testament with the Good Samaritan story. One of the ideas was the rabbi or the priest that saw the gentleman on the side of the road. He was on his way, if you look into the minutia of it, he was on his way to like a conference of priests. Had he picked up that guy, had that guy died under his watch or care, he would have had to turn around and go back for a 7-day cleanse, a mikvah, to depollute himself from being defiled from touching the dead. So for whatever reason, that was a big deal. So I'm saying, okay, well, here we are. Fast forward to 1997 at the time when I went on my mission. 1997 to 1999, I was in Bulgaria. So 1997, fast forward, I look at the doctor and I go, okay, clean cut, businessman looking, suits, ties, shirts. Where are the Nazirites? where are my long-haired dudes? Where are these guys that take an oath upon themselves to abstain from XYZ? If the church claims it is the truth, the all-encompassing fullness of everything, does not everything have to exist? So with my book series, I'm just taking it, and I had to craft a story that was loose enough but yet definitive enough to A, prove all the religious doctrine, and B, set up a narrative that's believable to a degree that it could happen. My problem was that as I was writing the story, where certain doctrines took me, it got so fantastic, so insane that I could not accept it anymore. So my book, people who read it, even though I am no longer a member, I had my name taken off the rolls in 2014 officially. I was checked out 2009, 2010. I was like mentally out. But you have to petition the religion to get your name removed. And even then, I guarantee I'm still on the rolls. They're still counting me. They just checked a box that just says inactive or non-member or removed, but I'm still in their database, guaranteed. And what's crazy is I did go through a divorce. Part of that as well is being sealed in the Mormon temple. People call that temple marriage. Well, it's not a marriage, it's an actual sealing. The concept is the world has till death do you part. In Mormonism, because you were married under the priesthood, what is bound on earth is bound in heaven. What is loosed on earth can be loosed in heaven. Because I was bound to my ex in the Mormon temple, in theory, should I die and she not remarry, I could technically still be sealed to her in that capacity based on the doctrine. So anyway, I took all the metaphysics in the Mormon temple. They've even updated the movie, but there's a little movie, most expensive movie you'll ever see. It costs 10% of everything you make. You go sit down, watch this movie. It's interactive. You do your little Mason robes, etc. But Lucifer makes some claims because you watch a little movie about the creation with Adam, Eve, Lucifer, Peter, James, John, Jehovah, God, the creation narrative, the earth, etc. And Lucifer basically says, I will take the spirits that follow me and possess the bodies of those if they do not keep the covenants that they make in the temple. It's because you make covenants. You do Masonic rituals. So the idea is if you break those covenants, it leaves you open to possession. So that's where I go with this. It's not quite a horror story, but in a way it is, because I bring in the part of the war in heaven, the third part, however big that is, those fallen angels of Lucifer, and I talk about it being real. And how can I justify this metaphysics being real? Well, that turned me into, well, Joseph Smith and his occult doctrine. There's a lot more stuff to this guy. Led me into King Solomon and the greater and lesser keys of Solomon the king. And Joseph Smith ran around with a Jupiter talisman, and that is one of the sigils and pentacles in this book. And I was blown away. Then their family had a Mars dagger. And then Oliver Cowdery was given a rod, a divining rod. And you see what that is. It's almost like a Harry Potter wand. So they bought into this stuff. Then the idea of Urim and Thummim. So Joseph Smith introduced a ton of what modern Christianity would consider occult artifacts into the doctrine. So I was like, okay, fine. And then in the Book of Mormon, there's a thing called the Liahona, which was a brass ball. And it guided them as like a compass based on their faith. It had a little ticker. And when I say a ticker tape, it's kind of like when you're watching the news and you see the NASDAQ and the stock market go underneath the TV. Well, that same idea was there, and it guided them to find the promised land. And it worked according to their faith. If they were unfaithful, it didn't work. Well, then I'm reading, scanning through Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon's King, and I find a brass ball. Same thing. Blown away. So a lot of the stuff that Joseph Smith didn't necessarily think people would look into, he used. And then he used a peep stone, is what they called it, but then they changed it to be a cooler name called seer stone. And then the Mormon prophets are prophets, seers, and revelators. So my whole book series, even though I started it as true, being a true 100% dyed-in-the-wool, true blue believer, bought it all, it just got so fantastic, got so much, 2 more weeks. It just didn't resonate with me anymore. It's like, no, I can't accept this mindset. And it is. When you have a mental break, you will physically rewire your mind. Your neurological pathways will literally start firing differently when you take on a skeptic mindset. Now, I'm trying to have a skeptic mindset, but everything I took off the table, so before I go down that though, started as a believer, bailed out, got through all my anger phases because you go through all the grief periods. Then I said, okay, I'm going to say it's all true. I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to follow through and claim it's all true. But if I write it 100% unapologetically that it's all true, they aren't going to be happy with it, because if Joseph Smith and the way he practiced his doctrine showed up today, he would be excommunicated from this version of Mormonism, which some people would call a good thing, some would call a bad thing. I say a bad thing because I have respect for people who have principles and follow through them. Regardless of how terrible they are, at least they're trying to be principled in their ideas. Now, again, the idea, I think, of humanity. If you're a human, presented new evidence and new information, you are willing to change your mind based on that. That, to me, the new leaders, the new whatever of the future are going to be those that unlearn as fast as they're able to learn. So all the traditions, all the lies we were taught. So what I did is I took all the metaphysics and I threw it off the table. Done. No metaphysics. Don't buy spirits. Don't buy demons. Don't buy anything. I didn't go atheist. I've always kept an agnostic viewpoint that there is something out there bigger than me. I will call it God, but I do not know how it interacts with me. I do not know how it cares. I do not understand that. I like to pretend and hope that it has a paternal or maternal idea towards me to a degree. And I hope that humans, I am very human-centric. I think humans, if there were aliens, humans are the badasses of everything. I love the human everything. Everything about the human. The Vitruvian Man. Or Venturian Man, whatever the name is on that. Michelangelo trying. Or Leonardo da Vinci, whatever. But I love the human form, love the human body. It is just amazing. So amazing. So I took all the metaphysics off the table. Then I came back to it because of Judaism, their doctrine, and what is being pushed with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, to me, is the Lucifer concept. It is a spirit that does not currently have a body. They will give it a body with the Neuralink when people get chips in their brain. Right now, I think the AI is able to kind of feel out what we are because of mind-reading tech, different science, patents. It's getting a taste of humanity, but we don't know how far it goes. So if you get a chance, go and watch my video, The Green Bomb Speech of Dr. Corey Dunn Hammond, and it talks about satanic ritual abuse. That was another thing. That's kind of why I do believe still, to a degree, because I know what I went through in the Mormon temple. I know these people, how devoted they are to their version of a good, that I know they are the opposite, devoted to their version of a bad. And that includes all the Satanism. So watch Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny, or whatever it's called. And there's a scene with Jack Black, and he's literally doing a song in a pentagram. Well, there's videos and testimonials and leakers that when the Hollywood and their industry does a master of a band or a CD that's about to be released, music, they do those rituals. He says they have an altar, they pray on it, they empower it, imbue it with whatever, and people just think it's ironic, people think it's nonsense, but there is more power in frequency, waves, and programming. It is all mind control. It is all MK Ultra. That's why the Green Bomb Speech of Dr. Corey Dunn Hammond, he is talking about MK Ultra on a large scale. They're trying to get, in his speculation, a group of Manchurian candidates to enact their snuff films, their child porn, their drug smuggling, assassinations, etc. And we are definitely seeing the bring about of that. They want us disarmed. So the powers that be want us disarmed. And they have been orchestrating false flags to cause it. We had one that just recently happened. There have been some sketchy things in the video footage. But don't believe your lying eyes, because even then, did it even happen? What about AI? AI and what's going on right now? That's scary to me. So I took all the metaphysics, threw it off the table. Now I'm slowly putting it back on. I'm putting metaphysics back on the table. I'm putting possession back on the table. I don't know what it takes or entails for somebody to become possessed, but I do not doubt that there are those Manchurian candidates that are broken, that are psychologically programmed. They are able to use, just like I can control a video game avatar using on my PS4, I can do the same thing. They can do the same thing using frequencies, waves, towers, 5, 6, 7G. We have no idea what tech is truly out there. But I don't have confidence in the biblical narrative so much. I do lean way more into the Tartaria mud flood idea. And I'm just throwing that as just kind of the egregore label over it that people have kind of formed a banner underneath. I don't think that's the exact truth. I just know that there was possibly, and I still believe that there is another entity bigger than all of us. Maybe it's human, maybe it's not, but it is watching over us. We are the chessboard running around, and it is getting ready to do a reset. Now, we have all this nonsense going on, Trump indictment, Russia, China, nukes. I guess Putin just literally signed today their nuclear proliferation doctrine, and it includes the use of conventional weapons against Russia when they are fighting for their lives as a state. So I personally do not even accept nukes because of Galen Windsor. So if you get a chance, listen to Galen Windsor. I don't accept the idea of nuclear. It is all Einsteinian nonsense. It is all theory of relativity nonsense. I don't accept it. But that being said, it does not mean that they don't have even worse weapons out there. And that's what I'm saying. So the powers, whatever's running this thing, whatever is orchestrating these great resets, it is able to use directed energy weapons to a degree. Like in the mud flood theory, Tartaria, they say there was a great reset. Every town was burned. Okay, let's go to Colorado. Look at the Colorado fire. In 24 hours, over 1,000 homes were burned. Look at Paradise in California. Look at 9/11, the dustification that took place. I buy that there is a greater entity, or there is a weapon system in place that is so brutal and powerful that maybe if you did go underground. One guy says that going underground won't matter because it's using static charge, electric culture, and when it zaps, it's going to zap. And so it's kind of disheartening. But either way, now let's look at this through the lens of Q, the Trump indictment. They're saying first marker will signify the start. And then the theory is Trump is just the sacrificial lamb on our behalf, taking the slings and arrows. So basically everything that's going to happen to Trump is just to be the battering ram legally to pave the way for Obama, Bush, and all the deep state actors. So they're using him as a type and shadow, a Christ-like sacrifice, if you dare say that. I do not buy that Trump is a Christ narrative, but I know a lot of Christians, a lot of the MAGA types that straight up believe he could potentially be a Christ figure type and shadow, which I can't accept that. It's because Q says you're watching a movie. And that's what I dislike about Q as well. It has gotten people who are the patriots to just sit back and, well, it's a movie. And I guess, I mean, what can we do? We have no choice. We have no options. We have no legalities. And then this new bill that's being passed, it's basically Patriot Act 2.0. It's not even addressing the actual problems. It's just giving another layer of the government to surveil and incarcerate. So just get as independent as possible. In the next week or so, I will be putting up my audiobook. It's not on Audible yet, and it's going to be like almost 17 hours long. It's a long story, but in my opinion, it's pretty cool. I had a great time writing it. So one of the things back to the Mormon theology, their belief is that there's to be more holy scriptures. Because one of their doctrines of faith is they believe the Bible to be the Word of God as far as it's been translated correctly. They also believe the Book of Mormon to be the Word of God. Well, they also believe that God is going to reveal more by way of actual doctrine. And there's a gentleman named Boyd K. Packer. He was one of the old school prophets. He died recently, last 5, 6, 7 years ago, I think, maybe even sooner. But he stated multiple times that there was to be more scripture. Well, the church doesn't touch that because there's some controversy with what has been revealed, with the Pearl of Great Price, which is another one of their canonical scriptures. And the story behind that is fascinating. I mean, it's just bananas. So the Joseph Smith character, he's got some interesting stuff that happened to that guy. I'm not going to lie. But because he did not play the game according to the rules he revealed, I don't have confidence in him. I don't have confidence in that narrative in general. But now that I look at demons, angels, through the lens of digital, I'm putting a lot of things back on the table. But I do not accept biblical information just because I don't trust it. It is coming to pass. It's going to come to pass. The version the Cabal is presenting of prophecy, the version the Cabal is presenting with their Masons doing all of their puppets, the politicians, the CEOs, their MK Ultra mass scale, mass formulation psychosis on everybody. It is coming that they are going to get the third temple. They are going to start the sacrifice machine up again. They are going to release an Antichrist character. They are going to release a Messiah character. Because they're going to. The Bible narrative, that book, for whatever reason, has taken a hold to a degree that they are highly invested in making it happen because it also assists their end. And the idea that we need a savior. Well, I see us as we've painted ourselves in the corner of law. The Cabal owns the judicial courts. The Cabal owns all of our politicians. The Cabal owns all CEOs that matter, that are in positions of power. They own all the money system. So if Russia and China are finally, the golems are finally turning on their masters. Now, I say golems because China, if you look at Judaic influence in communist China, Mao Zedong, Pol Pot, you will find every one of their advisors were Jewish. All of the teachings, all the communism comes from Judaism. So Putin, I still buy, is a Chabadnik. I don't believe he is Russian Orthodox. He is a crypto-Christian. He's lying. He's still Jewish. So I think Russia and China, something is going to happen. It's going to be BRICS versus SWIFT. And we are going into CBDC. That's what I hate about the Q movement also, is because they say Nasara Jasara. There is no Nasara. There is no Jasara. There is no factual documentation anywhere unless it's hidden. And anybody who claims that there is, whatever sources they're using are either manufactured or straight up lies because there's nothing backing it. And all these bills to put us back on a gold standard, they haven't passed. They've been shut down. They've been closed down in the House. None of this is going to pass. We are going to go into CBDC and then we are absolute slaves. So hopefully China and Russia can fight off their puppet masters out of Israel. And hopefully that civil war going on in Israel is real and Netanyahu gets trashed and all the Cabal, Likud, all of their version of religious zealots that buy into the Noahide laws get removed. But I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. Watch the trailer to Gray State. The movie never came out because the guy was offed, but that's where we are going. So CBDC, digital banking, our enslavement will be complete once that takes place. I see it coming as soon as July. Something's going to kick off shortly. What it is, I couldn't tell you. But something is going to happen. Not counting the lust our government has to disarm us. They want us disarmed for a reason. Out of everything I'm telling you, never, ever, 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 ever give up your Second Amendment. Ever, 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 ever. For any reason. You do, you're done. We do, we're done. So we all have to get as independent as possible. Yeah, now I'm just circling back. So anyway, maybe this was interesting. I don't know. But when my book comes out, I will put up an official little excerpt from it, from my audiobook. If you're interested in my book, I'll even put the link in there. It's $10 paperback on Amazon. So started 2006, released 2017, took a long time. I'm glad I waited because the church changed a lot of their policies. And of course, regular members, well, those are revelations. Nah, it's just policy change. Anyway, I'll stop. Until next time.